your core foundation has to be your website, so they can learn more about you without having to talk to you. But you want to allow them to establish a relationship with you as a professional and as a person that will predispose them to wanting to invest with you on your next deal.
Welcome to Truly Passive Income. I'm Neil Henderson.
And I'm Clint Harris. And today's guest is Dr. Adam Gower. He's the founder of GowerCrowd and a pioneer in real estate syndication marketing with over 1.5 billion with a B in transactions and a deep background in distressed assets and crowdfunding. Adam's helped institutional and individual sponsors raise capital online since the Jobs Act was passed. What's unique, he's cracked the code on LinkedIn, turning daily activity into a powerful capital raising machine. Adam, how are you today, sir?
I'm fabulous. Thanks for having me.
Your Majesty, welcome.
Excellent. Thank you for joining us. I'm really excited to dig into this. Neil and I do most of the capital raising for our syndication that we're to the 4 general partners in. So this is going to be a selfish episode for me. I'm sure I'm going to ask a lot of questions, but you've raised capital for institutional players, first-time syndicators. Can you walk us through your strategy, your online investor acquisition system, how you came about to fall into this?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. And actually, I'm also happy to really answer any questions specifically that you have. I mean, about what you're doing, your website, whatever tactics you have. I mean, we could do a real case study day if you want. It's entirely up to you.
Love that.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Why not, right? We might as well do that. So we can talk about what you're doing and see if we can't add some value to it directly. So the basic principle that you want to be adopting, at least the mindset that you want to have, is that you are online. And that means that just about everybody can see you. So you've got to have a center of gravity to drive your prospective investors to. And that center of gravity is going to be your website. And your website should be highly educational. That does not mean going to ChatGPT and saying, give me 10 articles about self-storage investing. What that means is you need to be, and you can leverage AI to do this, don't get me wrong, but you need to be articulating your value proposition, your background, track record, history, view of the world, value prop, investment thesis. That all needs to be in detail on your website. So that's kind of number one. Number two is that you need to have multiple lead generation forms. So, and we can, if you want, we can even share screen. I mean, it's up to you. I don't know. This is audio or video. I'm not sure. But you want to have lead generation forms both immediately on your homepage, a key message that explains to people why they should care, because there's only one thing that anybody thinks about when they land on your website, and that is, it's a pop quiz, guys. What's the only thing they're thinking about? What's in it for me? Exactly. It's all they care about. And you've got about a half second to answer that question. So your main headline needs to explain what you're about, what industry you're in, and why anyone should care, with a lead generation form that says, give me your email address. Basically, not quite as crass as that, but that's basically what it does. And then as soon as somebody gives you their email address, you follow up with a sequence of automated emails that introduce them to who you are. And those can point back to some of that content that you've delivered, especially if it's your core investment thesis. Then, once you've built that center of gravity, that website, then you want to start driving traffic to it. And the way to do that is either paid or unpaid marketing. Unpaid is things like LinkedIn, which is incredibly powerful, actually. And you can show up on podcasts. There's all kinds of some PR tactics that you can use to get visibility. And then paid marketing. So paid webinars, newsletter placements. So that's kind of email marketing. You can go to conferences and be a speaker, etc. But what that does is it elevates your visibility. So now your marketing is driving visibility. What do people do? Soon as they hear your name and your company name, They research you. And 99% of people still use that old steam-powered Google. And when you use Google, the first two things that pop up are going to be, if you got it right, hopefully you did, number one, your website, and number two, your LinkedIn profile. So that's why those two things need to be optimized. And last thought is this: anybody that invests with you is going to do what? I mean, the same thing, I don't know if you guys did, but you probably researched me a bit. But your prospects, they're going to do research on you. They're going to find these guys legit, or they, in a basement somewhere in, Nigeria. So make that job of doing the research as easy as possible for them, so they don't start researching your industry elsewhere and investing with somebody else. That's my story.
Wow, that's dynamite. I love that. So, if you don't mind, I will take the opportunity to kind of run by you what we're doing. Like, obviously, the biggest thing with a small startup syndication is getting the word out and letting people know what we're doing. So, we raised money for our first handful of deals just through personal relationships and small offerings, and we only needed to raise to buy an old Kmart building and convert it to climate controlled storage. It really only takes a couple $1 million because you're buying the buildings for so cheap. So we started off really not having to raise that much capital outside of our sphere. Once we got to the point that we really needed to raise a lot more money than that because we had a lot more deal flow, obviously we ran into challenges. And where we landed is we have this podcast mostly for educational purposes because Neil and I are students of the game. We want to learn. We want to connect with people like you, and we want to be a sponge and have the opportunity to record it so we can go back and listen to it again. It also helps us build a platform that has given me the opportunity, and Neil as well, to be a guest speaker on other podcasts about what we're doing, about what our belief system is, about what our thesis is. So podcasting space is very transactional. So we're little over about 100 episodes in on our podcast. I've been a guest speaker on a little over 50 other podcasts in different genres. I come from the medical community, so a lot of times I lean into those spaces where I don't want to just be part of the real estate noise. I want to stand out speaking to a different crowd and let them know, hey, this is what we're doing. There's opportunity if you're looking for something like storage without having to do it yourself and educate on that. That's been pretty low-hanging fruit because from our standpoint, everything comes down to a cost of capital. For the amount of money that we need to raise to do our projects, what's the best way for us to do that with the limited amount of marketing dollars that we have? So that's something that's worked well for us. On the money that we have to spend, we've leaned into meta ads, Instagram and Facebook, and that's all people basically clicking on a static link or watching a video, filling out a form, landing in our ecosystem where they're getting a series of emails and education. We record a series of webinars as well, live webinars that also get sent out to our investor base. And we've been building that base up. We're probably 2,000 people in our approved investor ecosystem that we have now, which is a big jump over where we were a year ago. What we haven't really leaned into is the LinkedIn space. We started to, and I think the people that we originally looked at doing it, it just felt like a misstep. And since then, they're no longer in business and doing something else. So I feel like there's a right and a wrong way to do that. And maybe we didn't know enough to know what was the wrong way to do it. But I'm really curious to hear, it sounds like that's your bread and butter. That's really where you found a lot of synergy. What do you love about that space?
Okay, fine. So first of all, can you hear the construction work in the background?
A little bit, not a big deal. Not a big
Surrounded by construction work. First of all, so we've tested and worked with just about every type of marketing platform that there is. Our clients manage over 35 billion of AUM and probably raise close to $1 billion with the kind of minimums that you used to, $25,000 minimums. So this is what I'll tell you about Facebook ads or meta ads. They are incredibly easy to run and incredibly easy to spend money on because Facebook makes it that way. You give them your credit card, you set up a campaign, Facebook optimizes the campaign so you get the best ads are put up first, et cetera, and you get charged, right? Every $900 or whatever it is, your credit card gets dinged and it's wonderful. Except it's not. Because the way to optimize any kind of marketing campaign is, and I cannot overemphasize this, your website has to be a lead generating machine, because anybody that's going to invest with you is going to do research. So you have to have that optimized. Once you've got it optimized, these are the kinds of numbers that you're likely to see in terms of cost on Facebook. So again, assume you've got a solid link, a solid online presence. It's going to run you about you may have different results actually, but it's going to run you between $50 and $100 per accredited investor lead, typically. And then about 4%, depending on how much you're raising, about 4% of what you're trying to raise in ad spend for what you're trying to raise. So if you're trying to raise 10 million, it's going to cost you 400,000 in paid marketing expense. Now, the challenge is to hit those, and your conversion rate is going to be about 2%. So for every 100 people, two will actually invest in a 30 to 90 day window. An average cost of acquiring an active investor, first-time investor. Again, if your data are different, just let me know. But I'm interested to if they are. But our experience is between 3,500 and 4,500 for a first-time investor. So that seems expensive, but you got to think of lifetime value as well. So it costs you that to get your first-time investor, but the second time you send them a deal and they invest, the cost of getting that investment is zero because you're just sending them an email. So you got to think of lifetime value. However, there's a lot more to it. To hit those numbers, your optimal workflow should be as soon as somebody actually submits a form to your Facebook ad, and again, it really depends on how you structure the campaign, etc. You want to be calling them immediately, like literally within seconds if you can, and get back to them immediately to hit that 2% conversion rate. So it's significantly more expensive than just the ad campaign itself, because you got to have people there ready to pick up the phone. That first phone call should be a screening and qual call, and then you transition them to a follow-up call with your IR team. So there's systems that make those campaigns work. What we found was that the quality of leads on Facebook was getting worse and worse, and Facebook is almost impossible to work with. So we decided to explore LinkedIn a little bit more. And so last summer, I invested actually heavily in some professional training. So not the usual stuff, I guess, but some very high level training. Spent a lot of money on it and extracted from that training best of class practices that apply specifically and only to real estate investors, meaning sponsors, right? Real estate professionals. Because there's not many people. I mean, there are some people out there who have profess to be LinkedIn experts in real estate. But really extracting best of class practices from other industries and applying them essentially is what we do. And we've had incredible success with that. I actually spoke to somebody. So my last session of the current mastermind is in about 2 hours. I'll be running that in a couple of hours. But in the last mastermind, one of our participants, I only learned this yesterday actually, does student housing. So she does student housing in Texas. And she is killing it using the system that I trained her to use. Finding accredited investors, converting them, and financing her deals. This actually my prior podcast series. I've shifted now to a different emphasis. But my prior series, I was interviewing these so-called capital allocators. And one of them told me, I asked him, he's a full-time physician, actually. You should probably meet him. He's a full-time physician, right? And he raised his money on the side. I said to him, how much have you raised? He said, 20 million in the last 2 years. I asked him, how did you do that? And without hesitation, he said LinkedIn. So it really is a very powerful platform. What I will say, though, is it takes time. A lot of people use VAs for it. And frankly, I just think that's just vanity metric. It's a waste of time. If you're doing it yourself and you're doing it properly, It's a lot of fun, actually. I find it, I think of LinkedIn as not being social media. I think of LinkedIn as being business casual media. So when you're on LinkedIn, it's like being at a conference of like-minded people, some of whom are potential prospects. So I actually really enjoy the process of posting and of thinking about what to post. And I also enjoy the process of meeting people through commenting and then through responding to DMs. So it works very well. It's very powerful.
Would you recommend, for Nomad Capital, have a LinkedIn presence and doing it that way, or just individually as a general partner of LinkedIn, I need to lean into that space and be more vocal
You should
about
be
what we're
doing it
doing?
yourself. Yeah. I mean, it's people invest with people. They don't invest in companies necessarily. I mean, there are all kinds of approaches to it. My recommendation is invest in you. What's your story? Who are you? What makes you tick? Be human, be authentic. It's actually not that, for some people, I think it's more natural to communicate in a very authentic way. For me, it's actually, it's natural to speak in an authentic way, but it's less natural for me to be personal about it. But for some people, it's easier to be personal. They I don't know how they do it, but you see them with pictures of themselves all over the place. Maybe they wander around and ask people, take a picture of me wherever they are. And that seems to work well as well. But people are going to invest in you. They want to know who you are. And if you engage in that process effectively, again, your core foundation has to be your website, so that when people research you, they can learn more about you without having to talk to you. But you want to allow them to establish a relationship with you as a professional and as a person, because what that will do is it will predispose them to wanting to invest with you on your next deal. They'll be in this invisible audience that never actually reaches out, never connects with you. You don't know they're there. You may do if they sign up, but for the most part, they will slowly become predisposed to investing. And that changes the dynamic when you actually have a deal from who are you, what do you do, why is that a good idea, what's your investment, to the kinds of, and we manage IR for some of our clients, very rarely, but we do occasionally. And the kinds of questions that we get are not who are you, what do you do, and why, but can I use my IRA to invest? Or I just filled out the offering docs in my name. I need to add my wife. How do I do that? So it goes from kind of conversion into administration. There is still a small conversion leap that you need to cover as well, from prospect to investor. And there are tactics and techniques for doing that effectively as well. But in principle, your prospects will become predisposed to investing with you if you do your job right, before you ever even connect with them directly.
I've heard you say that most sponsors tend to pitch too early, before a prospect has come to know, like, and trust them. What should an effective online investor journey look like, in your opinion?
Okay, so first of all, you want to be capturing leads in the way that I described, and then in between deals, nurturing your prospects. And a great way of doing that right now is acknowledging that the world is undergoing fundamental macroeconomic and geopolitical changes, and addressing those concerns. If you don't address the concerns that your prospects have, you'll never get through to them, because no matter what you say, all that's going on in their mind is this gnawing doubt, right? So, yeah, but what about tariffs or whatever it is at the time, right? Or I lost my money on multifamily deals. I've had capital calls and they've told me, they lost the deal to the bank or something. So you want to be really tuned into that and address those pain points immediately. Get those out of the way, because that opens the door to now accepting your message. If you don't communicate those issues, you'll never get through to them. And I forgot your question. What was the first part? You heard me say what?
I heard you say that most sponsors tend to pitch too early, before people know, like, and trust them.
So the way that I like to compare that is, and I see this all the time, you never hear from it. You go on someone's email list email list, and you never hear from them. And the first thing you hear is, we got a deal, webinar next Wednesday. In other words, invest now. And the way that I think of it is like this. You guys, I've been in this industry for a very long time, pre-fax even. And the way that you would typically harvest a lead or meet somebody and convert them is you'd meet them in person. So thinking about meeting somebody in person for the first time, no matter how you come to them, when online, when all you do is pitch, it's like meeting that person in person and say, nice to meet you. Here are the offering docs, the deal memo, and the wiring instructions. Would you like to invest? You would never do that. So the online world is really just I'm trying to think of the word. It's not replica, but it's kind of a mirror image of the in-person world. You've got to extract whatever you do on the in-person world. You want to be translating that into the online world and just thinking the same way. It's the same way that people get to know you. Think about any of the products that you buy, right? You see the name multiple times. If you want to buy a new piece of electronics, just, think of a brand now. Boom. Just like literally think of one. Something came to your mind when I asked that question. Why? Because you've seen the name 1,000 times. It's just repetitive. And when you see the name 1,000 times, it starts to elevate in your mind as something reputable and worthy of looking at, right? Not a no-name brand to go and buy a new computer or whatever it is that you're looking for. Well, the same applies to capital formation. You want to be in people's mind and recognized as a leader so that when you do, so actually what you do is you build a sense of anticipation in your audience. They're anxious to hear about your next deal because they want to invest. So you have to build that. You have to create that momentum along the way and not just say, hello, nice to meet you. Invest now.
I love that. My natural response is like when we have deals, leads come in that want to talk about what we're up to, is that I don't want to be in a position where I try to tell people that it's a good idea for them to invest with us. I'd like for them to come to that conclusion if it fits in with what their goals are for their family. So the way I usually naturally approach things is from a sense of education. I want to educate you everything on the asset class, what we're doing, our structure, and what our goals are. I can't decide if that fits in with what you're looking for or not. But that's kind of my natural response. How do you feel about that approach to things?
Yeah, so I've been writing about this recently, actually. So there is this field of thought in marketing, and it's very valid. It's actually less valid in the commercial real estate capital formation space. And that is the idea of your investor avatar. Now, in your case, one of your avatars is physicians or medical professionals. But that is only because that's your field. You understand that field. You've got experience there. So that is your field. The problem with creating avatars, and this is a big discussion, and again, I forgot your question, so I'm just going to go down this line of thought anyway, because I think I'm on the right track anyway. Is to the idea or the thesis behind creating an avatar, marketing to it, is that you say, okay, I want to appeal to physicians, to IT professionals, and to RIAs. Okay, so you create all these campaigns that are tailored supposedly towards those people because you think that by acting out a role, you will appeal to people who expect you to be acting out that role. You think that unless I speak their language, they won't talk to me. So I have to create this persona in myself and project that in order to attract these people. I actually think this is after years of saying that is the way to do it, by the way. I actually have found that there is a better avatar to be focusing on that. This is a difficult concept to get. But the ideal avatar is not somewhere out there. The ideal avatar is you. So the deeper you can get into your authentic, real self, the way that you see the world, the way that you interpret real estate investing or your motivations for moving into real estate, away from medical sales, for example? What was that? What you must have these moments where that voice in your mind is telling you something about how to relate to something. Articulate that. Don't leave it inside your head. Take it out. It's like, you remember that thing from Harry Potter where they took I forget what it was called, the pensieve, I think, where they took thoughts out and dropped it into a pool. Take those thoughts out, those unique thoughts that express the real deep thinking you, and talk about those, expand those thoughts and articulate them on LinkedIn or in a newsletter. What that will do is it will attract people to you who think the same way. They will be attracted to you. And that might have a heavy weight in physicians because you think the same way. But if you try to project a persona that you are not, you'll come over as fake. So you've got to be the real you. And just to finish off that thought, the way to really understand that concept is, you probably remember from high school math. Oh my goodness. High school math, you remember the bell curve. We used to call it the normal curve, right? So it's a bell curve like this. Down the middle are the masses who could care less. On the left side of the curve, 3 standard deviations away, or 0.1% of people will think you are total losers, right? They will never, ever invest with you. But for every one of those on the other side of the curve is somebody who is reading everything you write, watching all of your videos, and anxiously waiting for you to say, we've got a new deal. And those people get there because they relate to you. They just like you. That's how you do it. That know, like, and trust is not trying to pretend to be who they are, but being legitimately, authentically who you are. That is what will draw the right people in, like-minded people who will want to invest with you.
Well, I've got 2 comments on that. One is, we often feel, we go out on podcasts, we've got this podcast, and it often feels like you're just shouting out into the ether and there's just nothing but an echo. And then every once in a while, you will talk to somebody like, oh my goodness, I've been listening to your podcast for a year. I feel like I already know you, which is like, yes, that is the reason we do this. And the other thing is that one of my goals for this quarter is to segment our audience. We have probably 2,500 people on our mailing list now. And I'm trying to figure out, all right, what's the best way to segment that audience? Is sort of like what you were just discussing, which is, all right, are they physicians? Are they, are they cash investors or cash flow investors or growth investors and things like that? And it sounds like part of what you're saying is like, maybe that's not the way to do it. Maybe it's just like lean more into authentically who we are. And we'll just naturally, in the same way that you sort of advertise on Facebook, you don't really segment the audience there. You just kind of let the algorithm do what it does. And in some respects, you just go out and you be your authentic self, and you'll just attract those people who are on that right side of the bell curve that just like you. And does that make sense?
So I'm gonna come back at you with a question. Okay, there's one thing that you said here. So this kind of illustrates the point, and it's something that I advise sponsors to be very careful about. It was actually written by, I first became aware of this or heard somebody else articulate. It's actually in Richard Ringer's book. It's called Winning Through Intimidation. It was written in the 1970s. I'll give you the quote in a minute, but first I'll make the point. So you said you're trying to segment your list into cash flow or growth investors. Okay, why? What is your business plan? Are you cash flow or are you growth guys?
We're more growth.
Typically more growth. These are long-term holds.
Why then would you even think about trying to squeeze cash through investors through a growth strategy? It's not going to work. Why would you even try? I mean, this is rhetorical, but why would you even try to do that? There are enough growth investors. Be honest to your own investment thesis. What Richard Ringer wrote in this book, it's a great quote, and I'll paraphrase it. Obviously, I can't quote it verbatim, but basically he said, real estate, and he was 1970s broker in San Diego. I ended up in San Diego 10 years or so after he was there. But he said a real estate developer will build an apartment building in the middle of the desert if he can find investors to finance it. The point being that they are driven by something other than pragmatism, right? They'll just, okay, we'll make fees and we'll earn this, but it's not going to go anywhere. We'll do just fine. But in today's world, you've just got to have confidence in your investment thesis. If your investment thesis is growth, then lead with that. You will attract people who think the same way. I am currently extremely doom and gloom, actually. And I've been speaking to investors. I have a little investor group. I mean, I've got nothing to give them at the moment because I'm ways off from that. But I speak to high net worth investors all the time. And what I found is that I like to listen to what they say about their investing history and what do they do and, what's their experience and how have they been doing, how have their investments gone, et cetera, et cetera. And then I tell them what my point of view is, which is, separate topic altogether for right now, but it's definitely not aligned with most people. And their reaction is, I've found, extremely positive, almost to the point of relief, that they're glad to hear somebody speaking in the kind of terms that I speak, even though it is not consistent with the drumbeat of earn passive income, build wealth, and gain financial freedom, these ridiculous cliches that they hear all the time from everybody. They hear something fundamentally different from me because it really is how I see the world and where I think we're headed and how I think we should be playing it. And there is this palpable sense of relief that they are hearing somebody actually saying what's really in their mind and not constantly being subjected to marketing tactics to get them to do something that is contrary to their instinctive belief about, or their intuitive belief about where we are actually in the economy. So the story there, getting back to your point of segmenting the list, I'm not really sure there's any point at all in doing that. I started with the most incredible systems for micro segmenting my lists when I started 10 years ago. Seriously. I mean, I don't know. You look at the number of tags that I've got inside my CRM, and there are hundreds. And that's only because I started thinking, well, if somebody clicks on this link because they're interested in this article, therefore they must have an inclination to this. So I'll go back later with something hyper-tailored for them. No, it's a waste of time. Just appeal to those people who like you by speaking your true investment thesis, and they will come to you.
I love that. We have a very specific thesis, and we buy an old Kmart building. It's going to take us a year to build it out. It's going to take us 2 to 3 years to fill it up. So if you're looking for day one cash flow, monthly paychecks, or you're trying to replace an income from a job you don't like, we're not the guys. You should not invest with us. Move on. If you're a long-term vision, this is, things that we decide to hold for long-term. We can do it for half the cost of new development, which means we could do a cash out refinance and hold it for everybody stay in. If you got a very long-term vision, we'd love to talk to you. But if you don't check those boxes, it's not worth you investing, because ultimately, if 3 years from now you're disgruntled, I'm still the one that has to take that phone call. And I'd rather you know up front that this isn't right.
So I'm going to tell you exactly how to do that effectively. So I'll give you a couple of case studies. So one of our clients is an industrial B&C guy in Chicago. He's a really interesting guy. I like him to bits. When you sign up on his website, the first email you get from him says, "Thank you for subscribing to my newsletter. Here's why you should not invest with me." And it's a whole list of all the reasons not to invest. And at the end, he says, "If you're still here, fabulous. Wait for my email tomorrow. If I've done my job by putting you off, click here to unsubscribe now." Right? Okay. It's a brilliant idea, because now you're really weeding through, and anybody on your email list, it doesn't matter what their career is, they know your thesis. That's incredibly important, because now you can really nurture them. So here's how to do it. So we have another client. They're in agriculture. agricultural real estate. It's an unusual asset class. And it's a long story how we ended up with George. But we ran a campaign on a ranch for him. So this is a development ranch, same kind of characteristics, which is why I mention it to you, that so basically not planting seeds, but almost planting seeds. So 4 years before any income and a 12-year plan, right? Basically growing trees. You got to wait for these things to grow before you can harvest them. And then it's at least 12 years. We capitalized that. It was only a small deal. It was a $4 million raise. And we raised that so now I'm going to use some hype, the kind of hype you often hear. We raised that 4 million in 4 hours. So we did a launch webinar. We launched it during the webinar. And later that afternoon, I was scrambling to shut this raise down because I could see us hitting this limit. I didn't want to have to tell anybody, sorry, you filled out all the docs. And goodness me, you've wired money. I'm going to have to send it back and cancel because we're oversubscribed. But the reality was that it didn't take us 4 hours to do that. Actually took us 11 months. The first mention of this deal came 11 months earlier. We're looking at this ranch. We got an interest list. To be clear, we said 11 months ago. This is the characteristics. 4 years before there's any income or before we even start seeing income. It's a 12-year plan. Here are the projected returns. If you're interested, get on the wait list. And so we built a wait list slowly. And then there was another little teaser a little before the actual launch. And then when you do your launch, you got to have a nice sequence of communication that builds up to that. And then to a webinar, ideally, a presentation webinar with a sequence of emails that builds up to that. You launch during the webinar and open the offering during the webinar. And then you have a sequence of emails that build, and everything has to build FOMO, but particularly the closing sequence of emails builds FOMOs. And there are some kind of, what do you call it? Black belt hacks as well that you can implement along the way. But as you go through your close sequence of emails, building FOMO to don't miss out, almost gone, going, closed, that's how you do it. But so it takes as long as it takes for your investors. Here's how good way to think of it. As long as it takes for your investors to start seeing income, should be as long as it takes for you to nurture them to invest.
Wow. That's amazing. So in terms of building up the credibility with those people, circling back to LinkedIn, if that's a place that we have not leaned into, and it's a place that I do need to lean into, with our thesis, our authenticity, our story, who I am, what I'm doing, what am I within LinkedIn? What am I looking for? Am I looking for individual connections that I can make? And what is the most effective content I can put out? Is it static articles and photos, or is it video clips? And what exactly am I looking for?
So I run an entire mastermind on that. So I'll kind of give you the highlights right now. So first of all, ideally you want to be posting. I mean, this is really LinkedIn granular level, but you want to be posting 3 times a week minimum, same time of day, ideally 5. I post 5 times a day. It's only because I really enjoy it. And that content, there's all kinds of, when you look at the folk on LinkedIn who are the professional LinkedIn users. So these folk who earn their living teaching how to, develop your network on LinkedIn. They spend their entire time on LinkedIn. When you look at what they say, they have identified all kinds of patterns that you should adopt. I don't buy any of them because we're real estate guys, right? We're busy. We've got stuff to do, right? You can overthink these things and get not only overwhelmed, but you spend far too much time on it. So what you want to be leaning into on LinkedIn or any kind of communication, really, by the way, you should have a newsletter. Make sure you got a newsletter going out at least once a month to your email list.
Personal or company?
Company. Yeah. IR team, CEO, just something that updates people. You really do need to have that. Is to just write what makes sense to you. You want to be on topic, right? Like I spoke to Lisa Pendergast, who is CEO at CREFC, Commercial Real Estate Finance Council, just a couple of days ago, and published a podcast with her this morning. So, of course, why did I mention her? I've lost my train of thought entirely. Oh, so you want to be creating content that always speaks to your value prop in some way. And the biggest concern that people have at the moment is what's going on and the macro. Oh, Mal's, that's why I talked to her. That's why she came up. So she's quite a mall expert. And you have an interesting asset class. When I ran a special asset group at East West Bank during the global financial crisis, I saw a lot of these big boxes, empty boxes, bad debt. We couldn't move them because nobody had any idea what to do with them. They were impossible. They were one of the worst, almost as bad as land. Not quite, but close to, as far as how, hard it is to fill those things. So you have a very interesting value add, adaptive reuse value proposition that people don't really understand. So talk about that. You can talk about all kinds of things. Think about your day-to-day life, right? You're trying to find deals. What markets? Okay, why those markets? What's going on with malls in general? What's going on with retail? Just all those things that you're using to form a picture of the world that you live in order to help you make better decisions, better investment decisions. Share those. And don't always at the end say, invest with me. Just, I went to see this thing. This is why I didn't like. Here's a picture of me standing in front of this thing. Here's why we passed on this thing. We didn't like it because of X, Y, Z. Whatever, right? We like these markets. This is why I was out there last week. Here's a video of me walking around. And why? What are the macroeconomics? And then also share personal stories as well. I'm not so good at that. I put a picture up of me on the beach with my dog earlier this week. And I like it when I learn a little bit about the people in my network and see what they do outside of work. It makes them feel more friendly. I feel closer to them. So I figure, all right, fine. Well, if it works on me that way, it probably works reciprocally. Well, I know it does. I'm just more private. So it's a harder lift for me. But you should really just I'm kind of blagging on a bit, but you should really just post what feels good to you and what comes naturally for you to write about. If you try and write something else, you'll never write anything. You'll never post anything. It'll be a chore.
Before I shift and ask you more about your mastermind and the information I personally want to know about how to get more in touch with you and stay involved, I want to ask about who sees the things that you post when you're putting that authentic content on LinkedIn. Does everybody see that? Does it only go to the people you're connected with? Is there a way to boost that to a wider audience? How does that work?
That's a really good question. And that actually is the subject of today's last session. So I'll give you the highlights of that. Okay, so having said your avatar is you, and you should speak about who you are to attract people who think the same way and want to invest with you by definition or by default. You do also want to be getting out there in front of people who you think might respond positively to your message. So one of the biggest challenges with LinkedIn, one of the challenges that I had, and it's a long story. I mean, we were very successful on LinkedIn even before I developed this system, was that when you go on LinkedIn, you have your main feed, the infinite scroll, right? And you just kind of scroll through this thing either on your computer or on your phone. It's an infinite scroll. And so it's super random. You are seeing posts from people in your network or people that they comment on or whatever. That's what's flashing up, but it is super random. So what you want to be doing instead, okay, main lesson, post consistently at the same time of day, every day or 3 times a week. And then half an hour before you post, comment on other people's posts 20 to 30 times. And you can run through that really fast. So you get used to doing it fast. You want to be commenting. So that elevates your visibility right before your post goes out. And then for 30 minutes after your post goes out, I actually find it a lot of fun. I do it at 6 a.m. Every day. So from 5:30 to 7:30, at 6:30, I'm on LinkedIn. I just have fun with it. I mean, I have dry wit and a lot of hidden sarcasm in what I write, but only those that know read that. Others miss it completely, which is a real crack up. So that's your key process. Again, I keep losing my train of thought. But what you want to be doing when you write those comments is now commenting on those posts that your ideal target audiences are writing. Because they're out there writing because they want to be seen. They want to be visible. They want to engage in a dialogue or in a conversation with people on LinkedIn. They wouldn't be there if they didn't. So the way to do that is to create what I call spheres of influence. So those spheres of influence are groups that are physicians, in your case, would be an ideal group. It could be IT professionals. It could be journalists if you want to get some PR. It could be heavyweight influencers who will never comment on your posts, but whose readers will read your comments. So you have all these different groups that you identify, and there's a way of doing that so that instead of going to your feed, you just create sub-lists of your ideal prospects and look only at their posts. So you're able to you can actually filter LinkedIn so that you can read only the posts that your ideal target, and that should be targets with an S, plural, your target audiences are writing about that make it super efficient. So now you just start showing up where they would have never seen you before. It's a way to make it really efficient. I call them spheres of influence.
Well, I can tell we've barely scratched the surface here. You've thrown a lot at us, and I can tell you've opened a can of worms for me because I'm going to go down the rabbit hole learning more about this. For the sake of time, unfortunately, we're going to have to stop our episode today. But before we do, thank you, Dr. Adam Gower. Really appreciate you being here. If people want to hear more about you or GowerCrowd and what you guys are up to, or more about your mastermind, what would be the best way for people to reach out and do that?
So the best way to do that is go to my website, GowerCrowd.com. So that's my last name with a G, Gower crowd, GowerCrowd.com, and subscribe to my newsletter. There's no charge for that. You can always unsubscribe, but the first time you get an email or one of those, just hit reply if you want to ask anything or chat, and it will come straight to me, and I answer everyone that writes to me.
Excellent. Well, Adam, thank you so much. I can't tell you how much I enjoyed this. This one really resonated with me and gave us a lot to think about and work on. So thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. I enjoyed being here.
Thank you so much for listening and watching the Truly Passive Income podcast. If you liked the show, if you think it would be useful for someone else, the greatest compliment that you could give us would be to share the episode, leave a comment down below, or leave us an honest review. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to let us know down below. And remember, with truly passive income comes freedom of time, place, and the freedom to pursue your higher purpose.